Hello and welcome to Organic Cardboard. My name is Owen Kneep, and today I got the opportunity to play Tiny Epic Vikings solo once again, but this time I got to use the expansion content that I have not previously gotten to play with, and today I'd like to take a look at what's going on in that solo expansion content and give you guys my thoughts on how I think it plays into the base game. So the expansion that came with my Kickstarter version of Tiny Epic Vikings was the Ragnarok expansion. It's the only big expansion. Well, big, it's tiny, but it's the only expansion that was made and set for Tiny Epic Vikings, other than the little mini expansion, just like they do with most of their other games. They also have like a little Kickstarter, like mini unnecessary expansion that you can throw in. Some are better than others, but we'll get to that. So in Ragnarok, the big differences in this version is that you have a new player board, and the new player board has regions in it that are connected together. So the original one just had like islands that were separate from each other with each of the runes. This one has 4 locations that are actually buttoned up against each other, and so you can move settlers from one of those locations over into the other without having to like cross the waterways with them. And you have a couple of these like docks too that you can put your boats at that'll actually give you influence in both of those locations at the same time. So those are really like strategic areas to keep up with. But otherwise, at least for this solo side of this board, you have the same number of runes, same type of runes, but the real big difference is that you have giants. So each one of the areas that have the runes on them, each of the land areas, there is one individual island, kind of 2 islands. There's another set, looks like maybe a peninsula, but it's still separated away from everything else. But each one of those runed areas are going to get a giant on them, and these giants are difficult to kill, but they otherwise don't do too much to get into your way. They will block your ability to put a temple down until they're slayed. And then they give you quite a bit of points, and you won't know the point value exactly until you gain that giant and you flip it over, and you can keep it secret for yourself if you're playing a multiplayer game. But with this solo one, of course, it doesn't matter. You just don't know what the solo opponent is gaining when they gain their giants. But these giants, again, they're hard to deal with. They're hard to kill. You have to have 3 settlers, and you have to have a Valkyrie, which is a new type of unit that you're putting out on the board. And Valkyries are difficult to get out because you can only get them out if you lose a battle, and you can only take out the one. You have 3 Valkyries available on your board, and you can only place the one out that you have for the card that you lost the battle with, whatever that rune type. Each one of these Valkyries has a rune associated with it to reference one of the gods that they follow. And you can only deploy the one for the card that you got rid of during the battle and lost. So if you win a battle, you don't get a Valkyrie. And these Valkyrie count as 2 influence as well. So they're pretty helpful, and they've got some special abilities when you move settlers or explore with settlers. That action, you can use your Valkyries instead to take a special action where you can spend a food to move the Valkyrie to a new land and also pull a settler with her. Or you can spend 3 metal and actually move a whole temple over with you if you have a temple placed in that land. So the Valkyries have some special abilities in that sense, but there's 2 ways to get Valkyries. You can get them from losing battles, which is very unintuitive for me. Like when I play this game, that's one thing that I haven't played the game enough to wrap my head around losing battles properly, strategically. So anyways, we'll get back to that. But that's one way, and then the other way that you can gain Valkyries are kind of like a temporary Valkyrie that you're getting from a card. So you have Valkyries that show up with the other Viking cards, and with those you can use those in place of a Valkyrie in order to slay a giant. So again, to kill a giant, you have to have 3 settlers in the same land with the giant as well as a Valkyrie. And then you have to spend a card and not do any of the other actions with that card other than slay the giant. And then you actually lose all 3 of those settlers. But you get to gain the giants. But it really sucks that you have to lose all your settlers. It's really expensive. You basically are just like chucking the settlers into the giant to kill them. And everybody dies except for the Valkyrie. The Valkyries never die. Once they're on the board, they stay put. So they're kind of like little mini temples in that sense that can move around, but they're only worth 2 influence instead of 4 like the temples are. So these cards, you'll have Valkyries that show up that, again, will take the place of a actual Valkyrie unit on the board. So you can spend them just like you would to any other card to slay the giant. And then as long as you have 3 settlers, you can kill the giant. There are also giant slayers that you can use that are another special card. It's another special Viking card that comes out. And they still require you to have a Valkyrie in that location, but with these you only have to have 2 settlers, and only 2 settlers die as well. So they're handy if you don't have enough settlers, and then the Valkyries are handy if you don't have any Valkyries on the board. But one of the really nice things about the Valkyries is that they have a wild rune type on their card instead of the normal rune type that all the other ones have. And that means that you can use it for anything. So if you play it down with all your other cards earlier in the round, then you've got a wild rune that you can use for anything else as well, which is super handy. And if you use one of these in battle and that's the one that loses, then that wild type rune will allow you to select any one of the 3 Valkyries off of your board. And when you take those Valkyries off the board, just like all of the building types, they give you a special harvest action. So one will give you an extra food, the other one will give you an extra wood, and the other one will give you an extra metal whenever you do a harvest action. So just like your boats and your temples, they're really handy in that way. So playing against this solo opponent, I found it really difficult to keep up with their ability to slay these giants. They do not have to lose anything, which is a big advantage for them. They don't have to lose any settlers. They just take a simple action and they get to kill a giant. But the solo opponent is a stupid opponent. And I mean that in the literal sense. There's no thought process. There's no real AI that's going on, except for something very rudimentary that just happens to be with certain directional choices. But otherwise, everything that the solo opponent's doing is fairly random. They're just drawing random cards off of their deck, and then they're getting to just play whatever shows up. So you have a big advantage in having a brain, and the solo opponent has a big advantage in having basically twice as many settlers and getting to take these more or less free actions. So I had a hard time keeping up with how many giants the solo opponent was able to slay. 3 giants. Anytime they place a Valkyrie into a location with a giant, they get to take that giant as well. So it's really difficult. Some of the decisions on, like, again, with that it's unintuitive to know when you or how to like strategically lose, because maybe you're like, oh, I want to make sure I beat him in this battle, but then if you beat the solo opponent in this battle, maybe they get to put a Valkyrie down that's going to end up killing a giant. And those giants are going to be worth anywhere from 7 to 10 points. So it's a huge gain in a game that, for me, on this last one, ended 47 to 57, and I lost. So 10 points, 7 points even, is a huge boost one way or the other. So that is, again, just something that I had difficulty keeping up with, but If I played this another time, I think I would have a little bit easier of a time in facing the solo opponent, because one of the other things that I let them get away with too much is the battles. Again, I either didn't want to lose the battle or I didn't want to get involved with the battle. And by not getting at least involved with the battle, I ended up giving them just way too many resources. I did hold back the harvest cards from them quite a bit, as much as I could, because one thing I've noticed when you play the solo opponent is that harvest actions give them such a huge boost. They get all these extra abilities whenever they're harvesting. Normally they don't actually pay any resources for anything, but when they harvest, they get all these actions that happen along their tracks for their resources, and they can get a huge turn if they get a big harvest action that happens. And so when they're winning battles, to whether you're in the battle or not, they're usually gaining a bunch of resources, and that kind of sends them over the edge whenever you're playing against them. So there's a little bit of gaming that's going to go on with just like a lot of solo games, where you have to kind of learn the mechanics of how the solo player works, because again, there's no brain involved. They're just doing things in a particular way, and then as you get used to the mechanics of that, you can kind of plan around that in a way to game them a little bit better, and it's a little bit more of just a simple kind of puzzle in that way. Of course, this isn't simple. These choices are difficult. It's hard to decide when you're going to, again, go for a battle and try to win it, or go to lose a battle in order to get the Valkyrie, and you would also get the regular Valhalla boon that you would get from the different gods as well. So one of the other things that I played with, besides just the Ragnarok expansion itself, was the Shamans expansion that came with the Kickstarter edition. Now, I believe they'll, just like most of their other games, they'll sell a deluxe version of the game that will probably have this in it. I wouldn't stress too hard about this. This is just a small addition. If you don't have this, if you go for the retail version, I wouldn't worry too hard about the Shamans as though they're something that's necessary. They only add 6 cards. They add 6 Viking cards into the deck, and those Vikings are all going to be Shamans. They'll have 2 runes instead of just 1. Both of those runes will be the same type. And then they get to just do a little bit of, I don't know, stuff that usually tends to involve with increasing the fury of the gods in one way or the other. So they're really god-oriented. Makes sense. You're trying to go along with that theme of being a shaman. And then they get some kind of extra little ability on the bottom, just like all your other Vikings do. That's situational, depending on if you have the runes or not. But the other thing that the Shamans expansion comes with is a couple extra gods. It comes with Loki, and it comes with Hel, the goddess of death. It's not a big deal either way. They don't add a huge amount into the game unless you just like the picture. Loki lets you switch 2 of your settlers with any 2 settlers of another players. And then Hel will let you select up to 2 gods and reduce their fury by 1. So it's not like they're just some crazy cool characters. It's just a couple extra ones to throw in here. But the biggest thing that the Shamans expansion adds, more to me than what the Shamans themselves add, are these Cairn tokens. So there's on each one of your those cards, I can't remember what you call them, the favor cards, I think is what you call them, that you get for winning a battle, the ones that have the resources and the runes that you get to score at the end of the game. When you start the game out, you'll put these little Cairn tokens on each one of those cards. And then when you start a battle, and even if you don't win the battle, you just say, hey, I want to go for this card, then if it has a Cairn token on it, at that point you get to take the Cairn token, and then this will act as a wild rune type that you get to spend. You just spend it whenever you need to. But it's really helpful, though, if you've got situations where you can really boost something with an extra rune, or if you need a rune to play a card down, because even just having one wild ability like that it can be pretty huge. So I think that's the biggest thing that the Shamans expansion adds that really changes the game. But otherwise, the shamans themselves are cool. I mean, all the pictures, the artwork in this game is just overall really, really well done on the cards. I think, to me, this is the best artwork that they've done on any of their games. But overall, I really enjoyed what Ragnarok is adding into Tiny Epic Vikings. I think it's really worthwhile to add into the game. Now, as far as a rating, I don't think it necessarily like improves what I would what I had originally said was for Tiny Epic Vikings. I want to say I rated this at like a 7.5. I could be wrong. I'm gonna double check that right here. So, but I don't think it necessarily makes the game like jump up and level to be like a higher quality game. But what it does add into it is those extra choices. And the one thing I will say that I think it really does help improve a bit on the original game is the fact that these Valkyries really push you to want to think harder about getting into and losing battles. Because I think the original portion of the game was like, oh, if you lose battles, you get these Valhalla boons, and you can do a little extra special thing that's situational. And yeah, most of the time you get these gods that have things that maybe aren't even useful for you, so you don't really care, and you don't want to lose those battles very often. The Valkyries add 2 extra influence. They help you to kill the giants, and they let you move things around like your other settlers and even your temples. So, and you can only get these tokens again on the board by losing a battle. So yeah, I think that's what Ragnarok is really adding into the game, is a little more of a push to go for one of the mechanics in the original version of the game that might not be utilized as much. But overall, I did really enjoy my playthrough of it. I would like to play it again and actually win, but this time, you know, you can't be lucky every time. So it took a lot of, and it was a lot of thought. So this is a good medium game. Like, this is not a light game by any means. So it's definitely takes a lot of thought as you're playing out each one of these turns. But again, really enjoyed it. Check it out, Ragnarok. I think it's totally worth the time, and it's worth the extra buy-in to get if you like Tiny Epic Vikings, or if you think you're going to like Tiny Epic Vikings, might as well go ahead and grab it too, because you're probably going to get it. So just do it. But anyways, I think that's all I've got to say for today. But if you enjoy this kind of content, you know, you can always give a couple of those free clicks on the screen. Really helps support out channels like mine. But as always, I thank you guys so much for stopping by today, and I hope you all are gaining access to this game, that you're getting to play it, as well as just finding time to play any of the games that you do have. But until next time, I will see you on the next video. Thanks so much for stopping by. Take care. Oh, look how clean and nicely packed away every one of those pieces is. Yeah, I'm not going to do this again. So we're going to get this out today, and we're going to try out Ragnarok.